Good evening, and welcome to the Tuesday, March 10th, 2020 Facilities Committee meeting. We're going to start off the evening with introductions and administrative remarks. And first, a big welcome to our Acting Director of Operations, Bill Dolan. If you can't hear it, he's getting applause from the audience as well.
Thank you. That's right, and I appreciate the name tag. Okay, so I am on. I'm figuring out how this works. Good. Okay, so, well, thanks for having me here. This is day 2. I think it feels like one big day, but it's been really exciting. I got a chance to tour almost every building yesterday and meet so many great people here. So what a wonderful team we have. We're here mainly today, I believe, to talk about the high school wellness program, which I'm just getting up to speed on. We had a great meeting Friday before last, where I got acquainted with it, and we have Steve with us to, kind of fill us in on where we are with it.
Thank you. Okay. I'd just like to thank Bill for coming on so quickly as our acting, and also thank Vaughn. Also, we mentioned we have an acting assistant director of operations as well. He started yesterday, so the two of them together, we're keeping our entire operations program moving forward, including what's the focus of tonight's meeting is that the project at the high school. So it's good to have Steve, our architect, with us to walk us through that timeline as well.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment? Reserving it for the end. Okay, we have the approval of the minutes. Anybody have any concerns with the minutes from last month's meeting? Okay. I think then those are approved, Patty. So the agenda items, move right along. 4.1, the RHS ADA Accessibility and Wellness Infrastructure Project Update. And I guess, Bill, is Steve going to lead this?
Thank you very much.
Let me introduce Steve Behrens is
Okay.
our architect from Breslin. I always just call it Breslin, I know.
That's fine.
And he's
Most
been,
of us do too.
for people who don't know or have missed kind of the many meetings we've had in the past, Steve has been working with both the district and with a special steering committee from the district to help us with the project, and was kind enough to come today and give us an update somewhat based on the steering committee meeting from a week and a half ago.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity. There was a board vote on the project in January, and we have hit the ground running since. As been mentioned, there was a steering committee a week ago Friday. So I'd like to just lay out how we're moving forward with the project in general terms, and give you a sense of the schedule and phasing and what we're going to be doing as architects and as a team with the steering committee moving forward. So we're entering now what we call the schematic design phase, which is the phase of the project in which we take the concept that was developed during the study and move into a slightly more detailed design phase in which we look at adjacencies, sizes of particular program elements that were identified in the study, and to confirm the budget and the scope, and to then be able to move forward into the next phase, which is design development, where we take those individual spaces and begin to design them in more detail. So really the core of the exercise now is confirming those important decisions with regard to budget and size and scope, so that when we move forward, we know we're moving forward with that consensus and those important decisions being made. Because one of the things that comes out of that process is beginning the land development process, which really by its nature requires us to have the building footprint in particular really established, because that's what identifies the impervious area of the project. So that's schematic design in a nutshell. And so just to reiterate this slide, not to read it to you again, but just to say that we are keeping the project vision in front of mind, and everything that we do moving forward needs to be tested against this. And then the approved project scope is also what we're confirming and then developing with the schematic design. And again, this is a slide that you've seen before, but we keep it as our focus because that's what was part of the board approval. So then, part of this very important phase of testing the scope and the schedule is to, especially in particular with a project of this complexity and touching so many different aspects of the building, and is to develop right out of the gate a strong concept for how the project would be phased. And since even the steering committee meeting, we've had a conversation with building administration to begin to look at how each of these spaces gets used, how we need to define each of the fields and the team rooms and how they will be used, what will be disrupted during the construction, and to be able to plan for that, to make everybody involved aware of that, and so to minimize the impact on the educational process as much as possible while still creating a cohesive project, one that is well thought out in terms of its phasing for bidding purposes and for constructability, so that what we're proposing flows well, and so it's critical to be looking at that right of way. So,
I'm sorry, can I stop
Sure.
you right there? Could we get copies of your presentation? Because we have a schematic that does not match what you're showing.
well,
I think it does.
yes,
I think
there's
it does, it's just the colors are a
Really?
little different.
the
Well, and
colors are
this part
different,
isn't
but
on
then
it.
also, and I have that as the next slide, because what you're
Okay.
seeing there is in the addition of a potential subsequent phase with regard to the access road and the maintenance building that was not part of the approved scope out of the January meeting.
But can
So-
we get the 3 slides up until this point?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure, yep. So this phasing plan here is similar to the one you have, but Phase 3 has been removed because that is not part of the base scope for this project.
But I had asked the architect to separate that out in that way, because that last phase, we did as a committee agree to, have our engineering firm, ELA, look into whether or not there would be even, to begin the preliminary work of any possibility of could we even do that. So while we did not approve that, we did approve the beginning part of an investigation to see if something like that would even be possible.
And that was approved by the board, not just by the committee.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
yes, I meant.
Just making sure. No, I just didn't want anybody to think we're off running around spending money without board approval.
Good, thanks for that clarification, that's important. So this phasing plan here does not include that scope. So we, our design process and our authority approval process, be that land development as well as building permit and bidding, we're sort of zooming through that to get to this point where we're actually beginning construction conceptually, to describe that to you. So we would look to be beginning construction in May of 2021. And so those are the sort of the red and or orange, however your eye might register that. So that would be the building addition work. So that's the amount, that's the pieces of the phasing that take the longest period of time. But then also, when they're complete, create the space, the swing space that other program elements in the building can be moved into, so that they free up space elsewhere in the building for renovation. So, and the other piece that's important for this is then to schedule our summer work for that first summer of 2021, such that Prevost Field is available for football in the fall. So the you'll see that the work specifically with regard to that is in a subsequent phase. So the red is that work that we would anticipate being able to complete as a first phase, with a subset of that being just purely summer work. And that would be particularly with regard to the site, again, to gain access to the field, as I mentioned. And then the field house and the associated site work with that would be a separate subset within that phase. So that can occur, again, that would be a longer duration. That would begin at the same time in May, but then carry through December, again, just based on the duration that would be required for that, the construction of the field house and that other work. So that would be going on during football season, but it would be safely fenced off in a way that would still allow you to use the field. And then phase 2 would be that, and that would be then starting in 2022. That next summer, that would then be the Prevo field, the bleachers, the track, the turf, those components. So then, again, our plan would be for that to be concluded in July or August of 2022, again to facilitate use for the football season. And then, meanwhile, during these phases in selective ways, there's work going on in the interior of the high school as well. We're talking about renovation for once the fitness addition is complete, then we can back into where the fitness room is now within the high school, and that can become the trainer education space to support the wellness program, health, or those sorts of program uses, and then other areas of the high school interior, including air conditioning of the entire physical education wing. That's a piece that we're proceeding a little bit more slowly. That's not depicted here yet because we're talking to our MEP engineers about duration and how that system would be installed and how that would impact the use of the space. But that could easily be that second summer work to allow for proper time for procurement of some of that mechanical equipment. And then having that in place so that second summer everything's ready to go and you hit the ground running with that construction. So then the project is complete then in August of 2022. Again, depending on where we phase that final piece of the interior renovation. So that's it in a nutshell. I know that's a lot to absorb here, and hopefully the colored plans, and when you get your own copy in hand, it might even be easier to see. But that's it in a nutshell, and that's what we're developing right now.
So I had a chance to preview some of this and probably even in more detail in the steering committee. So if other people have questions, I have a couple, but I want to let everybody else ask their questions first.
Yeah, I just have one right off the top. Why are we waiting until 2022 to do the bleachers? Because I thought that was the main focus of this whole thing.
Great question. The bleachers and the field and the track and the turf are really conceived here as one piece in its totality within the project. The construction of the additions are nestled between the field and the high school building. So what we're trying to do is create a situation where we're not installing the field, installing the track, and then having construction activities and construction equipment traversing that area and potentially damaging it. And then also typically the building addition is done first, and then we're backing away from that with the site work around it, because it's really a hand-in-glove situation there for that addition and these athletic components, including the bleachers, around it.
So Steve, we did talk at one point, I know the steering committee bounced around a lot of ideas, and that was one of the concerns that the steering committee raised. And we did talk at one point about, we could do the bleachers and the turf the field and do the addition last, but in order to do that, we would have to pick another part of our campus where you would stage all the equipment, and it would essentially mean putting it, one of the places we talked about was on our tennis courts, and the problem with that is then we're gonna probably have to replace the tennis courts because all of that damage that we caused. When we know we're already doing the turf and the track, because they're due to be done, they will certainly be due to be done by then, we're gonna do maintenance to keep them functioning properly. The idea was to only potentially damage things we know we have to replace anyway, as opposed to causing other damage. It doesn't mean it can't be done if we come up and it changes the bidding process and other reasons to do it. But I think that Steve's trying to give us the best advice on how to minimize cost and disruption to our other programs. Nancy, Liz? Sorry.
I have a question about the pool. Right now, you don't have any renovation. What about the pool deck?
The pool deck itself is, yes, I don't have that filled in. The locker rooms are part of that phase with the new natatorium addition, because that's all one piece there. And I should have mentioned this, along with the athletic wing AC, the pool, the natatorium itself, that piece of the work and the systems that are associated with it, that again, we're hoping that would be summer work, and that there'd be an option if that's first summer or second summer. And again, it has to largely do with procurement of equipment and so forth. So that's another piece that we're now investigating, where would it be best for that to fall. And again, working with the PE schedule and the community use of that facility.
So right now, you don't, like, based on this timing, you wouldn't interrupt a swim season?
That's correct. And that's one of the things we're talking about is what is, and that was one of the conversations we had even this morning, about what is that season, how do we nestle that work within that? And then we'll talk to the aquatic consultant about the realistic scheduling and procurement of that equipment.
I do have a question about overall timing. Should I table that? Like, not the phasing per se, but the, just in terms of, I see, when we do schematic design phase, when we present, do we have any time built in for community input and presentation?
Yeah, another good question, and something that we're wrestling with, I think, within the steering committee right now. Their schematic design doesn't end the opportunity for input, but it does start the opportunity for us to begin the land development process. So we're wrestling with the need to define and fix the size of the scope and the budget, while still acknowledging that there's constituency groups. So during design development, that's the next phase. Okay, that one of the things we're exploring is how do we offer that opportunity during that phase, when we are drilling down more into not how big is the addition, because we can't let that linger through the summer and still meet our schedule. But once we get into the specific design development phase, where we are talking about the specifics of those spaces, that may be the best time to bring in those constituency groups where they can have the most impact on how spaces are being fit out, what the equipment is that goes into them, that sort of thing.
So, I mean, I think one of the other pieces that the steering committee was very mindful of is that the board approved a certain budget, and the budget related to specific plans, and there's a footprint for that. And if the board wants to change that footprint, that likely, I would hate to say even potentially, probably likely changes the budget in some way. I mean, maybe it cuts it if we made the footprint smaller, but I think that we've had a fair amount of input. We had the feasibility studies earlier on. We've given opportunities. I think the steering committee and the administration, Ken will correct me if I'm wrong, but that the preference was to say, look, this is the footprint. We're not going to 30 million. We're not going to 35. This is the footprint, because those big changes will affect things. And then we are happy to take community input on how that footprint gets used. But we have to set that footprint. This is what he said. Because because I was asking this too, like, what if we just want to add on another little thing? If we're changing the footprint, then we're changing the land development, and we have to restart the whole project, the whole land development phase all over again.
So related to that, what if, so we have two other initiatives going right now, right? We have the PennDOT, and then we also have an enrollment study. So how much flexibility do we have in this, given if we hear something back from enrollment, or if we're a go on the PennDOT, and, you know, I know the board has to make a decision about a budget, but, you know, where does that fold in, and have we wasted money? You know, can we just move forward from that and fold it in? How does that fit in? Because I'm assuming we're not going to hear back from PennDOT by the time we need to submit land development plans.
Right. So I'll deal with the second question first. Yes, because the budget and the scope of the approval did not include that piece of work, and there's a different approval scenario for that is likely more lengthy. And so if the board does elect to move forward with that other piece, then that would really have to be a separately bid, separately designed, and separately reviewed project. It's not something that you know, come August we can just sort of slip into this, right? Yeah.
And please jump in, and I'd ask members of the steering committee, you know, who are here also jump in. From that meeting we had about a week ago, where we discussed and looked at this timing and this phase-in, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, we looked at the idea that from that April time period to the June is when we would want to have those public meetings and get out to people from that April to the June, and we felt that the April to the June, if I remember the discussion, we want to, when we get out to people, have something. Everybody has seen what we have already, you know, so going out to everybody with what we've already have and what they've already seen, they've all seen that. We want to go out to people with the schematic design, you know, as rough as they are and where they are, but from that April time period through June to be gathering that feedback from all the different groups. Is that accurate from the discussion?
That's accurate. That's a much better way to say it than I did.
Are you saying
Yeah.
like as of April 28th or before that?
I mean, I think as soon as we have schematics that we can use to be sharing,
Right.
we would want to start scheduling.
There's
some of those
much more
meetings.
visuals that come out of the schematic design process that will allow people to see what's being proposed, right?
Okay, so,
But even after, so let me help, because we had some conversation about this. So the schematic design process is February to April 1. We're going to have an opportunity to get feedback from April to June. The board would be approving that schematic design at the end of April, which really is starting to lock, the one thing that is starting to lock in, doesn't mean it can't change as we get down to the design, you know, in June. It could change between then and the design approval in June. But the one piece is that envelope, that how large is
Right.
the building, the
Right.
perimeters of it, and those pieces. All those details that are going to be inside, not only would we be discussing till June, we could have a little bit of time in the summer as well if need be. Is that correct?
True, yes.
We're gonna try to
The-
lock down as much as we can by June.
Right. The impact of changes obviously grows the further deeper we get in. But yes, there's still plenty of opportunity to say, you know, things within that envelope. And there's a lot of questions to be asked. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for feedback, because at some point, we're even going to be talking about where the data outlets are, and, you know, what the casework looks like, and all those sorts of things, and what, you know, identifying every piece of equipment within the fitness lab so that we know that there's power to it, because There's nothing that doesn't get plugged in today. And so we need to have that all developed when we go out to bid. So as we move on, we're just going to get deeper and deeper into the specifics. And that's when meetings will continue, quite frankly. Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not completely following what you're saying. So the board, what is the board being asked to approve at the end of April? So my specific question is, I understand there's a number of extra classrooms built into this, and I don't remember if we were ever told what we're doing with them. But suppose it comes to our awareness that we don't need to build extra classrooms, for example. At what point in this can we make that decision? Because we've got other information that we're going to be getting concurrently with this project. So what
Yeah, the program.
footprint, yeah.
Yeah, the program of the footprint, I mean, can change. I mean, we're starting to have those conversations. Okay, if we're showing 3 classrooms, how would those be used? And you know, we're starting to do that for the purposes of making sure we're showing them the right size. But whether that becomes a health room or that becomes a sports medicine room, or the fitness room has to grow a little bit or needs more storage, and so we take a little bit of space out of those classrooms. You know, those are the kinds of things that will continue to develop.
Well, but so what if we wanted to save money and say, we don't actually have a plan for 3 extra classrooms? Can we save money and dial back a footprint that has something thrown in there that we don't
Yes,
need, for
during
example?
schematic design, that's exactly the conversation we'll have. That what is what is the need? How will these spaces be used? We need to justify every square foot, really, to spend money. And so what's the detailed program for every one of these spaces? And if it's determined that we only need 2 classrooms, then yes, then we can dial back that footprint.
Up until the end of April.
Correct.
And
right.
after that, basically, you're taking whatever we gave you and you're building it.
Well,
that kind of
no,
what you're saying?
no. We're taking it to the next step where we have a more detailed design. But yes, schematic design. At some point, we need to say the addition is this big, and it looks like this because that's what we need to submit for land development, and that takes lots of calculations with regard to stormwater and impervious, and then all of those, the township and county and other authorities that have jurisdiction, they're going to be reviewing those plans. And if the plan changes, well, then that's wasted time, and those reviews then become null and void. So yes, we don't want to come out of schematic design with the program of the building still in flux. Because
Okay.
then we won't be able
Got it.
to continue our process and keep it on schedule.
Okay. Now, so I have,
Can I just, before, because I don't think we got an answer to Liz's feasibility question, and I think it ties in
I
to what
think
you were
it's the
asking
same
about.
question somewhat.
She asked a question about how this ties to the feasibility study that you're also doing for us in terms of use of
In
educational
terms of
programs and
enrollment,
spaces.
yes. This was not primarily an enrollment-driven project. It's really about accessibility and the wellness program and, dealing with deferred infrastructure issues within the high school. So, we do have the benefit now, and again, this is something we talked about in the steering committee, because that was a thought. Well, what if we come back later and decide we want to add something, the courtyard, for example, where we're currently showing a classroom. If we wanted to come back and do that later, it'd be far more expensive and maybe logistically almost impossible to do. And so the thought is, let's be wise in capturing the footprint that we want here for the most economical price. Now, you know, that enrollment study is starting now as we speak. And my understanding is we will have that feedback by the end of April. And if there's some sort of bubble that we need to be planning for, then it really starts to justify these rooms. If not, then we look at it and we say, is there some other program that could benefit from the space? Because if you want it, now's the time to grab it within the budget that we've already presented and has been approved. Or if, you know what, no, it just doesn't make sense, we can't find a good use for this, it's not wise to spend these dollars, then we pull back accordingly.
Well, so, of course, you offer people space, they're going to grab it. I don't think that's the right way to spend public money. I'm very uncomfortable hearing, no, we still don't know what the plan is for between 4 and 7 extra classrooms. Well, yeah, somebody's going to come up with a great idea what we should do with them, but
It's
that
not
doesn't
7.
mean we should
It's
build
not
to
7.
them.
It's
It's
three.
3. I thought it was 4 too, but it's only 3.
Well, even there, I'm not even clear, where we are with that.
Yeah, there's.
Of course, people will grab space if it's available, but that's not the right way.
Well, the one is generated by displacing the fitness lab into the new addition. So there's one there regardless. The other 2 are just filling in the upper floor of the addition.
Yeah, what the board and we discussed for the last year and preliminary approved was it's just, there is additional 2 rooms, but the third is actually where the trainer, so we're taking the trainer out of the closet area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that area for the trainer to be. That's
Yep.
what you're talking about when you say
Right,
the.
yeah, a portion of the existing fitness room is the trainer.
Trainer, yeah.
And then the balance of it is available for education space.
Gotcha, okay, that's that piece in purple there, and then those are those 2 rooms there.
Yes. So if in the addition we want to pull back and just do 1 classroom, that's really what we were debating, was that extra classroom, if you will. What, the 2 of them are just there as part of the addition. And really to have a classroom supporting the fitness lab is appropriate, because normally those spaces have that, and there was a strong desire to have the health room located as part of the overall wellness program.
And for those, those tuning in at home right now, the piece that we're all talking about is we did hire, a feasibility study. And as part of that feasibility study, we have a company, Insight, to look at our enrollment and to look at those projections. So we anticipate having those enrollment projections and that data done in time, that it will actually fits very nicely with our time, our time frame. And, if we find out that we're seeing, a decreased enrollment for our high school, doesn't match the increased enrollment we're seeing at our elementary, who are moving their way towards our high school right now. And that's the reason why we've conducted that study, because as a district, we're, concerned that we're, where we see with both the age of our buildings, K to 12, the age especially of some of our elementary buildings, but also looking at the enrollment levels at our elementary level, especially this past year. We're conducting that study. So that information will be timely, and we can see at the high school, do we see projecting increase or decrease enrollment, and that can help influence us.
Correct.
So we have some documents here from the, I guess, kickoff meeting. Why is this not available widely?
Oh, we could share. That was, so we have a steering committee, which we've had for, oh my gosh, a year or 2 now. And these were just the minutes of the steering committee we shared with the school board. We did not post them publicly, but we certainly can, after this meeting, post them publicly. I don't know that we commented to all the members of the steering committee. We have students, we have staff, administration, that
Okay.
any comment you make in the steering committee is also going out publicly. So just to be conscientious of,
Well, and the
people who are-
emails of committee members, like, I mean,
Mem-
mine's out there,
Okay.
but I don't know that everybody
Yeah,
else
so
wants.
that's
yeah.
the only reason, but it is a public document, it's public we share it with the school board, so the school board can see, here are the minutes from the steering committee. It's something we certainly have no trouble making public. I just would want to make sure I sit with all the steering committee members and they approve and see those minutes before they're made public, since it could be quoting individual members of the committee.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm not asking for that. I just wondered why it said that. And then my next question is, has anybody approached you about joining the committee? Because I don't actually see a student listed. Maybe they couldn't attend the meeting? Okay, so there are people on there. Has anyone else asked to join
Yes,
the
and we actually
committee?
have some additional people that we've just recently added to it as well.
Okay. Can you,
And just for continuity, because Mike Miller has been on the committee for so long, we asked him, and he very graciously agreed to stay, because, just for continuity, I think it's really helpful to have him. And then Nancy's joined. We
Okay.
tend to meet at 8 o'clock on a weekday, so it's hard for a lot of people who work.
students?
And
yeah.
for the students, although I think we've given them some concessions sometimes to attend the meetings, because we do want their input. Tim Henkel has been on the board. Was there, I can't remember if there's been another student. I think there
Is-
was
Chris.
someone. That's Chris Henkel, I'm sorry, not, both of them, yeah,
Are
father
they-
and son.
They're going to stay on, or have they dropped off? They're going to stay on, and Nancy's joining? Okay. And then, is there any other students besides Tim?
Chris, no, not as of right.
Tim's the dad.
I don't think there is of right now, but we actually are looking at making a couple other additions to the committee, so that's one thing we're considering.
Just wondering. Okay, thanks.
Liz, is there anything else?
Good.
Okay.
A lot of my questions have already been answered. I had an issue with, or, a question about community feedback. And then also in terms of the timing of the bleachers. But one thing, I know with phase one, you mentioned that and it makes sense that the bleachers would come kind of after the new additions are built, just because of the disruption of access for the vehicles. But will the field still be in decent shape after that first summer to play sports and everything? It's not going to rip it up or anything, like for football or
No,
other sports?
my understanding is that the field has been tested.
Okay.
Its impact rating has been tested. And the plan is to refurbish it, to fluff it up, through a machine that does that. And then testing can be ongoing for that next and final season to see if it is within tolerances. And my understanding is that it is, from what I overheard in the steering committee
Yeah, I
meetings.
just
Yeah,
wondered.
I think we were, our outgoing director of operations confirmed that it is, and that, I think he left you with the task of making sure it gets re-raked again this year to make sure we could continue.
And one last question, with the phased approach, like knowing that the fitness center is going to be finished before the others, I mean, I'm assuming that the students will have full access and use of that before all the other work is done.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And my other questions kind of have already been addressed, so.
So I actually had a request, and I don't know that it's so much for you as it may be for Ken. Given people's general aversion to large group events these days, and the potential.
What are you talking about? Go ahead.
I would hope that when we have these meetings in the future, as the spring, especially if we feel like people aren't going to want to come to these meetings, if there's any way that, certainly we post things online, but if there's any way to allow for some kind of online participation for people to type in and send in. I don't know, I mean, that's a very corporate thing. I don't know if we have that kind of ability.
Let's have it outside.
We can look to do that. Yeah,
But
you're
I
talking
just,
about
something
even-
that we can
sure.
do where people who still want to participate but either can't come for childcare reasons or for other reasons.
Yeah, we can do that with our steering committee, and actually, it's a great reminder too, just for, for everyone in our community. We have a dedicated website
Yeah.
on our district website, but we have a dedicated link right there on the front page for this project, the High School Accessibility and Wellness Project. Every time the steering committee meets, we update it. So I believe the updates are up. I'm not positive from our last meeting. And we'll continue to do that. And it also has opportunities for places where if you have questions, where to post and those type of things as well. So we are looking at, we've done a lot of communication about this over the last, really it's been a year and a half, almost 2 years. And we're continuing to have a great deal of communication. I mean, that was really the focus of the steering committee was, this is a very aggressive timeline, in my opinion. And I'm glad it's aggressive, and we want to stay to that. But it is an aggressive timeline when it looks at the type of, feedback and community feedback that we want to have from all our different groups, opportunities for the board to see and digest at every step as well. I'd rather set it aggressively, and then, if we need to adjust here and there by a little, but let's do our best, to stay on that schedule. The next piece that we need to talk about is bringing in a construction management firm as part of, and this, I don't know if this doesn't necessarily have to be the segue, but as part of when we approved this project, as part of the soft costs, we also approved having a construction management firm come in, as for us as a district to help move it along, and to protect our rights within the project, but also to keep the project moving through bidding and through construction, and projects that have a construction management firm come on early and begin that process early. Both conversations with Bill and with Steve, instead of waiting till construction time, but doing it before even bidding, really helps with the continuity of the project. So we will be talking within the next month about a construction management firm and having them get on board as well. We've actually had preliminary conversations with both our architect and our solicitor about potential firms.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I know we're all
Yeah, my
getting
pleasure.
antsy. We're looking forward to those schematic designs and getting a real sense of, more detail than what we've seen so far. And I know you're working on it. You've got a whole team working on it feverishly, but
That's right. Yeah.
we look forward to seeing that in April. I know it's going to be at the April Facilities Committee meeting. Have we talked about whether, I apologize, I meant to ask you this before the meeting. Are we still thinking we might have a facilities meeting of the whole, or do we, next month? So that the board has kind of 2 bites at the apple to see the schematic design in committee and then again at the full board meeting?
Yes, I think one of the things we discussed would be that the April meeting, we would look to do a facilities committee, but as the steering committee meets in the next, which is coming up next week, I think it is, we can look at that and make sure that we're picking which meeting is the right meeting, but we will
Okay.
consider that. Yeah.
Okay. And just so members of the public know, the steering committee, Ken was right, we're meeting very aggressively. We're meeting, I think it's every other week, just to make sure that we keep on task, we keep everything on task, so that when it comes to this committee and the finance committee and the board, everybody's on message and aware of what's going on.
I really appreciated getting the information from that. Could we get it immediately after your meeting? Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
You can get it as soon as we have it. I don't know that we have it.
Yeah, it
I don't
takes
know.
a few
Yeah.
days to generate those minutes
Yeah.
and
I
get them
can't stand
reviewed.
the 2-week delay.
Yeah. You've got to look at you got to set the bar a little higher on your readings, on what you're picking to read as literature there, Lydia.
It's sad, Ken, very sad.
That's all I have on the agenda this evening. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up? Okay. Does anybody on the board have committee have any new business?
Yeah, I have a question, and I don't know that anybody knows this here, and I might be paranoid, but it seems to me that they're chopping trees down at the high school. Am I like making that up?
You mean the ones along King of Prussia Road that are
It
dying?
just
and
seems
falling
to
over?
me that it's way thinner as you're driving down Lancaster and on King of Prussia.
We will check and look. I know that there have been trees that, that there was concerns about, that over the last year, our discussions, we've identified trees because of, problems, unfortunately, needed to come down. I don't know if it's part of that. We can check and get back to you. We'll look.
Yeah, it just seems, you used to not really see much when you're driving down Lancaster. Now there's a huge gap where kind of that entrance is for the back of the bleachers there. It looks like they took stuff out there. And then, yeah, on King of Prussia, it looks like it's much
Yeah, but they're dead.
thinner there.
there was a big chunk of one of those trees that landed in the road during one of the storms.
Yeah, but don't forget the person that gave us that information was also the person that.
No, you can look at them, they're objectively dead, and one of them landed in the road. I'm not making that up.
Yeah, okay, but I just, in light of what's been happening in the township, we just need to take I would like a second look before we chop anything down anymore. Just if we could do that.
Well, we will look and get back to you about what is, your questions and understand that. Whatever we have got in the works is already as part of a plan, that has been developed and identified trees that could be dangerous or trees that are coming down. I mean, that process is happening. We'll go back and look at that process and we can get back to you to answer the question, but I don't know that we're going to halt or put in a whole new, process in place. But
So what's motivating my question is that I believe one of the people or some of the people involved in what happened with the township might be some of the people that gave us advice on the health of our trees.
I got to jump in
I
there.
don't think that's fair.
Not
Absolutely
the same.
no connection
No, not the same
whatsoever.
people.
I mean, I would just say that.
No, I'm not the only
and
person
then
probably in the
that-
township that's wondering that.
No,
so.
no, well, I would, that I have not seen, heard, or recognized any connection with those two things, so.
I'm referring to the arborist. Was there no arborist report on what happened I don't know everything about what happened.
I don't want us to, I just feel very uncomfortable with us getting into or conjecture over something that is a township matter and not a school district matter. So I'd rather us not have conjecture like that here, if that's all right.
Yeah, and I just want to put in my plug, and I feel like I did this last month at another meeting. I want to be the micromanagement police. I mean, I don't think it's fair to ask Bill or Ken to ask us every time they have to take down a tree. I think we hire them for their abilities and their skill sets, and we know that they know what they're doing. And if they're going to take down a whole row of trees, I'm sure they'll let us know. We get those kinds of updates and administrative remarks. As a heads up, we'd like to see them. But I don't think that it's fair. I don't want an update. We're going to be here all night if every month they update us on every little thing they do on every property. I mean, I do the opposite. I do sometimes say, hey, I've walked by Radnor Elementary and there's a pile of brush there. Someone needs to clear that. And if I see a tree that I think looks unhealthy or unsafe, and I drove by the tree that had fallen down on King of Prussia and pulled over and texted Mark that night and said, hey, we have a tree in the road. But I don't think that it's fair to expect them to get board approval for every tree that comes down.
No, I'm not asking that. I'm more just saying, and tell me that nothing came down and I'll be very happy. It just seemed to me that it looked like there were trees that came down. Do you have some insight?
When Mark was not here, Jim Flanagan approached me for the side of Lancaster Avenue that I believe you're referring to, said there were some trees that were dangerous there for our students that were running in there. So I did give him the authority to contact our normal tree person and take some limbs down. So that's maybe what you're referring to, but we didn't take any full trees down to my knowledge.
Thank you.
I had just one request for an update, and if nobody has it, that's fine. I've noticed it at the entrance to the high school. It seems like they're making progress with putting in the street light. And Bill, I know you probably don't have much update on that, but maybe Ken does on kind of the timing and what to expect in terms of interruption to access to the high school, et cetera.
I don't know off the top of my head. I know there was a schedule, and you can see from the work they're getting closer to that. We can find that out and bring that back next month on what is the schedule for the, for the high school entrance there and the light and all of those pieces.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any new business? Okay, public comment.
Jeff Bajukas, 228 South Wayne Avenue. Just a piece of new business, a request. We talked a lot at some of the meetings this winter about renegotiating the agreement with the people who use the pool. I'd like to make a request that the district look at all the agreements that it has. And as we're doing this project and we're talking about making this investment into the health and wellness of the community, I think we need to get the usage of the fields in line with what is safe and appropriate, so they don't get worn out. And also the usage fees, if we're doing basic market rate for the people who use the pool. We should be doing that for the other clubs also. And I know this is something that the last time the board and the facilities committee undertook this, it took a pretty substantial amount of investigation and a passage of a substantial amount of time to get it done. And just looking to the future, it's probably something we want to be looking at now, so that when these agreements start coming up again, we can renegotiate those. And I know that from looking at the agreement with the soccer club, what they are using the fields for, particularly loop and the grass fields, and other fields in the district, is not commensurate with what the contract provides for. They're doing a lot more use of all the other fields than the contract provides. And they're getting that use for free, which, soccer club. So if you look at the agreement that is signed with the soccer club and the lacrosse club, it relates only to Enke Field, which is the field that they assisted in providing new turf for. They contributed to that. They are using not only multiple fields on the high school property, they're using other fields like the grass field at Radnor Elementary, and other fields for practice and use. I'm not clear that we have any agreement with them. We may, for usage of those fields. And again, they're members of the community, and we've talked about in this committee and the board and in the subcommittee about continuing to give them that access. But if we're going to be the athletic provider for the athletic clubs in the township, and they're using those fields, particularly a field like Loop that gets totally chewed up and becomes unplayable oftentimes in the fall for our high school students, we need to make sure that we have a good idea about how much they're going to use them, and also that they're paying to use them like every other soccer club does in this area. So I would ask that we take a look at these contracts, make sure that we have them in place, and make sure that these clubs are following them and that they're priced correctly. Thank you.
Did you want to weigh in on that?
I was looking to see if there's any other public comment. Seeing no other public comment. So one of the things, and again, you know, the timing is actually working out well for this as we move forward. We had asked Michelle Deco, our business manager, to make sure to work with our Citizens Advisory Council, and one of their tasks that our finance committee and administratively we tasked them this year was to help us and give us some guidance and to evaluate our facility usage structure and fees and all the different agreements we have. And so Michelle has been busy for many months now, working with them, looking this over, developing from Citizens Advisory Committee's, stance, a recommendation and feedback for us. That's going to be ready in the next couple of months for us as a board to start to discuss and look at. And I think as Jeff just mentioned in the public comment, it's something that will take time for us to discuss as well. But the timing is right, because as we look at this project, as we look at these pieces, we want to continue to partner with our community members. We understand that we are the community center in many ways as a school district for our youth athletic programs. But we also recognize the toll that all of that takes on our facilities. And it is, I think we're at a good time. And I think our groups are willing. I've already had, our youth soccer has reached out and said they'd like to have discussions with us. Our groups are coming to us also and saying, we're willing to work with you, school district. Let's sit down and talk. So some of those conversations are beginning to happen, and we'll be having those discussions publicly once Citizens Advisory comes to we'll probably kick it off at a finance committee meeting and go from there. But really, it'll probably be at a finance committee that will then be part of a facilities committee meeting that will eventually go into a policy committee meeting, because all of that is policy as well. What is that rate schedule and how we handle that? So more to come.
Thank you. I knew that from sitting on finance, but I want to make sure you gave the accurate update. Any other public comment? Okay, I think with that, we're adjourned.